Hi everyone, if you are preparing for IGCSE Computer Science 0478 Paper 2, this video series is designed to make your revision easier and more effective. We'll be covering chapter 7 to 10 using practice questions similar to those from past papers, so you can understand the type of questions you will face and how to answer them effectively. If you're also studying for paper 1, be sure to check out our separate video series on that, where we have covered past paper questions from chapter 1 to 6 in detail. These video series are here to support your learning, build your confidence, and help you achieve the best grade possible. Let's dive in and make your revision count.
In this video, we are going to cover past paper questions on key topics such as finding the minimum and finding the maximum. So let's get started. Finding the minimum. Question 71. Write a pseudocode that asks users to input 10 test scores and output the minimum score. First, we create a variable called min and give it a very large number. This is so any score entered will be smaller than it. Next, we use a for loop that runs 10 times because we want the user to enter 10 score. Inside the loop, we use an input statement so the user can type a score. That score is stored in a variable called score. Then we check if the score is smaller than the current main variable. We update the main variable with this new smaller score. The next I statement tells the loop to move to the next round until all 10 scores are entered. Finally, after the loop finishes, we use an output statement to show the smaller score entered by the user. Question 72. Given the array numbers with the values 13, 7, 29, 5, and 21, write pseudocode to find and output the minimum number. So first of all, we create an array called numbers with the values 13, 7, 29, 5, and 21. Next, we set the min variable equal to the first number in the array that gives us a starting point. Then we use a for loop that goes from 1 to 4, so it checks the rest of the numbers in the array. Inside the loop, we compare. If the current number is smaller than min variable, we update the min with that number. The next I statement tells the loop to move to the next number in the array until all have been checked. And finally, we output the main variable, which shows the smallest number in the array. Question 73. Given the array marks with the values 88, 67, 92, 55, 70, and 66. Write pseudocode to find the lowest mark in the array. First, we create an array called marks with the values 88, 67, 92, 55, 70, and 66. Next, we set the min to the first mark in the array. This gives us a starting point for comparison. Then we use a for loop that runs from 1 to 5, so it goes through the rest of the marks in the array. Inside the loop, we check if the current mark is smaller than min. We update the min with this smaller mark. The next I statement tells the loop to continue to the next mark until all marks are checked. And finally, we output main variable which shows the smallest mark in the array. Question 74. Write a pseudocode algorithm that input 5 numbers from the user and finds the smallest number. To solve this problem, we can use different types of loops. I'll show you the solution using a for loop, a while loop, and also a repeat until loop. All three will give the same result, but the way they work is slightly different. Here is a solution using the for loop. I have already explained for loop in previous questions, so I don't need to explain it again. Now let's compare the for loop and the while loop. Both are solving the same problem, but the difference is that the for loop automatically handles the counter, while in the while loop, we need to manually increase the counter inside the loop. Now let's compare the while loop and repeat until loop. The while loop checks the condition before running, so it might not run at all if the condition is false. But the repeat until loop always runs at least once because it checks the condition at the end. Finding the maximum. Question 76. Write a pseudocode algorithm that inputs 5 numbers from the user and finds the largest number. First, we set the max variable to a very small number to make sure that any real number entered will be bigger. Next, we use a for loop that runs from 1 to 5, so it will repeat 5 times. Inside the loop, the program asks the user to input a number. Then it checks if the number is greater than max variable. We update the max variable with this new larger number. The next I statement tells the loop to continue to the next round until all 5 numbers are entered. And finally, we output the max, which shows the largest number entered by the user. So basically, this program finds the maximum number out of the 5 numbers entered. Question 77. Given the array scores with the values 42, 77, 63, 98, and 55. Write pseudocode to find and output the highest score. So same thing. First, we need to create an array called numbers with the values 42, 77, 63, 98, and 55. Now we need a starting point to find the biggest number. So we set the max variable to the first element of the array. which is 42. So score 0 means the value at 0 index, which is 42. Next, we want to check the rest of the numbers. For that, we use a for loop starting from index 1 up to 4. Inside the loop, we check if the current score is bigger than max. If it is, we update the max to this new value. Next, I moves us to the next element in the array. And finally, when the loop is done, we output max. That shows us the biggest number, which is 98. Question 78. An array called data holds 5 integers. Write pseudocode to find and print the largest value. So first, we'll create an array called data with the values 19, 25, 31, 12, and 47. Now we need a starting point to find the biggest number, so we set the max to the first element of the array, which is 19. Next, we want to check the rest of the numbers. For that, we use a for loop starting from index 1 up to 4. Inside the loop, we check if the current value in the array is bigger than max variable. If it is, we update the max to this new value. Next, I moves us to the next element in the array. And finally, when the loop is done, we output max. That shows us the biggest number in the array data. Question 79. A program is needed to find the highest age from a set of 5 ages entered by a user. Write pseudocode to input 5 ages and then output the highest age entered. I'll show you the solution to this program using 3 different loops: for loop, while loop, and repeat until loop. You can pause the video to go through the code. I'll just explain the differences. The for loop runs automatically from 1 to 5. The while loop checks the condition first and keeps running as long as it is true. The repeat until loop runs the code first and then checks the condition, and it keeps running until the condition becomes true. So in general, for loop is used when you know exactly how many times to repeat. While loop is used when you don't know how many times, but you have a condition to check first. Repeat until loop is similar to the while loop, but it always runs at least once because the condition is checked at the end. Other than that, the logic is exactly the same, and all 3 programs give the same output: the highest age entered.